Hey guys, I recently did a 3 mountains world conquest, and I wanted to talk about my strategy, what went right, what went wrong, what I do different, and let's just jump into it. To give you a very shortened version of the plan, I was going to form Prussia, then Germany, then the Holy Roman Empire. This would give me 90% admin efficiency and pretty good core creation cost, and from there, I would be able to conquer the world. I would start the first 50 years by basically doing nothing. All I did was get an alliance with Korea, seize land on cooldown, and dev for the institution. I would get my first colony in 1502. From there, I would immediately march down over to Mexico so I could war with a Mayan nation, and then proceed to lose the war and force my religion to Mayan. Mostly for the 20% core creation cost, but the colonist was also nice, and there's some other nice buffs in there as well. I would pick exploration and religious ideas as my first two idea groups, with the intent of getting to Mexico and declaring Deus Vult as many times as I could. I wasn't planning to colonize much other than that. I would just wanted to use Deus Vult on the colonial nations. I wanted to be strong enough to fight Spain and Portugal by the time they got here. I would arrive in Mexico via colonization in 1512. Once I arrived in 1512, I started to declare Deus Vult straight away. Within 15 years, here's where we were. Around 1528, I would notice Spain was here, specifically New Spain. My plan was to attack the colony before it had many guides of its own, which I was able to do pretty easily. I got full annexation and continued to conquer. Spain would return and declare war with me, and rather than fight him, I figured I'll just let him take what he wants, and then when it becomes a colony, I'll take it over again. And that's exactly what happened. I would continue the same back and forth with Spain a few times, where he would attack me again, and I would take his colony again. I would want to get over to Europe as fast as possible, so I was looking for Denmark to colonize so I could war with him as soon as possible. Denmark would show up around the 1570s, and I would start gearing up to go to war with him pretty straight away. I needed to get a path to Denmark, so I started conquering some of the natives here. Once I was in the colonial region, or once I was connected to the sea, to him, I went ahead and attacked him. I made the war goal a province in the New World, and he showed no resistance, so I got full war score, and eventually I was able to demand Bornholm as well as Lolland in the war. I wanted to be able to get claims on Commonwealth and Mecklenburg, or Lubeck. So I had a few targets. I would fabricate a claim on Rügen, declare the war, occupy Rügen, and use ships to blockade the strait. This war would take a long time because I literally had to wait for the war score to tick to max. I had no other way of getting war score out, as I was by far inferior to the Commonwealth at this point. I actually ended up not having enough war score, so what I did was sailed my guys and forced march to the capital and did a barrage and assault before his armies could reach me. That gave me enough war score to grab the 3 provinces I need to form Prussia. My next goal was to dismantle the Holy Roman Empire and to use Ryuku's negative 25% aggressive expansion buff to the best of its abilities. I would also abandon exploration ideas in favor of espionage for the additional negative 20% aggressive expansion impact. So for me, this was like being the papal controller, or something like that. I could conquer an insane amount because I had so much aggressive expansion impact modifiers, right? My plan from here was to ally every elector and run down Tuyen and assault and barrage it as quickly as possible. I didn't have any ambitions to actually win the war, so that was kind of, I knew I was going to lose the war, but I at least needed to dismantle the HRE. And I didn't care if what are they going to do? Make me release some colonial nations? Like, I don't have anything that they want or are connected to. And so, that's what happened. I had to release a couple colonies here, or I had to release a couple nations here in my loss in the war. And I did get the dismantle off as planned. All I did was run to the capital, and it was good. I was allied to every other electors, and that worked out fine. From there, the HRE was dismantled, and I could go crazy with my conquest, right? I had insane aggressive expansion mods by this point. as Ryukyu, you get a negative 25% aggressive expansion buff, and I swapped my exploration ideas for espionage. So from those two alone, I would get negative 45% aggressive expansion, as well as I had max absolutism by this point. Not to mention, I had Deus Volt. So that being said, I did not form Prussia straight away because I wanted to take advantage of that buff. So as you can see, I formed Prussia just about 1660. And I did this because I was struggling with these wars. Honestly, I was struggling. The ideas I picked had no combat benefits at all. They're all meant for world conquest. So fighting someone like Austria or Burgundy at this point it was very, very difficult. So I wanted to form Prussia just so I could even the playing field. And I felt like I had taken enough land that I could justify it by now. At some point, I swapped to Protestant with the intention to go back to Mayan, but I couldn't figure out how to go back to Mayan because I'm not experienced with switching my religion that way. With that in mind, I kind of said, screw it, I'll just go Protestant. I don't know how to go back to Mayan. That's something, if I could fix that, that would make a huge difference for another run. From this point, it's not super exciting. It's basically, I'm Prussia. It's 1660, and I have max absolutism. So I'm going to go crazy with the expansion. I'm going to try to form Germany and play like I was playing in Europe the whole time. I was able to ally to the Ottomans, but they weren't very useful. They were almost always in debt. I managed to bring the Ottomans into maybe 1 or 2 wars, but really, they were just in crippling debt, and they really weren't that helpful. However, now that I was Prussia, I could tell immediately the difference. My guys were cracked. They went from being horrible to being pretty good. So before I formed Germany, I would need to complete the 5% admin efficiency for having 100 provinces. And I would need to get the mission for Balance of Power for the Brandenburg Gate. This process took longer than I had hoped. You'll notice in 1720, with only 100 years left, I still haven't formed Germany. And I haven't even taken all of North or South America. I've probably taken about half of the colonial nations. And just, a good chunk of Europe, but not much. So if you looked at this point, and you took a guess, do you think I could conquer the world in 100 years from this point? I had this idea in mind that once I hit 90% admin efficiency, I was going to be able to conquer like a mad lad. So I finally formed Germany around 1730. And I was able to take Granada as well. I finally hit 80% admin efficiency. This, in combination with hitting Tech 27, would reach the peak of 90 admin efficiency, which is where I wanted to get to and where I thought if I did get to, I would be able to pull this off. So from here, my main goal was forming the Roman Empire because I wanted the core creation cost reduction. Because that was going to be a major stopping point in being able to go to the next war, right? I needed to core things before I could keep declaring the next war. I didn't think I had time to constantly deal with rebels, so I couldn't be overextended. So now I had the 90% admin efficiency, still pushing to be the Roman Empire as my #1 goal, but it was already 1770, less than 50 years. So I was getting a little stressed, to be honest, but I didn't want to give up. So around 1775, I finally formed the Roman Empire. From here, I had about 44 years left. I still had a ton to go, but I had really good core creation cost, really good admin efficiency, and I didn't want to give up. I just went wild and kept warring like an animal. I didn't ever went overextension until the last 10 years. I just kept coring and coring and coring. And I'll go ahead and play the last years and you can watch that. Nothing super exciting. You guys have all seen what it's like to world conquest at the end. You just go crazy, right? So I would just continue to go crazy. I was generally in at least 5 to 6 wars. And then towards the end, I would be in something like 20 wars. So my plan for the end was completely ignore rebels, don't core anything anymore, just conquer. You have to, and just conquer everything before the rebels enforce demands. Fortunately, I was able to pull it off, just barely. I was super nervous that I wouldn't get the achievement. All I saw were a few forum posts that said I could do it, as long as I did a true 1 tag. However, I pull up the achievement list, and the achievement popped up, and I was super relieved, and very excited that I got the achievement. As you can see, my nation is ready to break, right? I did not make it in much time. I still had technically 2 years in the game, but you can see my rebel situation is out of this world. It's so laggy because there's literally millions of rebels. As you can see, I'm near 3K overextension. Things are bad. I've got the revolution disaster. Definitely my nation's about to break. But we did make it. Most of these rebels had about 12 months before they enforced demands. Let's talk a bit about ideas. I would start off with exploration ideas. This is pretty straightforward. This is why I did this. I needed to get to the New World. Next, I would pick between expansion or religious. I actually tried expansion first, and I would find that it was super annoying getting Casus Belli's on everything. Not to mention, I would run into some AE problems. So I did try expansion first and do the colonization route, and I didn't think it was very good. So after I tried that, I would switch to religious with the intent to be able to conquer easier without having to waste so much time getting Casus Belli's. So with that, I grabbed religious. Next, I would grab admin ideas, as I started to run into major gut pet problems, as I was taking almost all of Mexico and wanted to continue conquering. On top of that, I wanted the 25% core creation cost, which would be great in combination with me being Mayan. Next, I would go quantity ideas, and this is mainly for the land attrition mods, because I will need a couple land attrition mods to World Conquest, as it's a super important late game if you want to stack your armies in larger stacks. I would then abandon exploration ideas in favor of espionage, as I was just arriving to Europe and I wanted super high mods for aggressive expansion impact. I then would go for humanist, as doing a world conquest without humanist can be very difficult, as you start to get crazy rebels, and you really don't have the time to deal with rebels the whole time, right? You want to keep conquering, you can't be dealing with rebels the whole time. I think humanist is pretty important for world conquest. From there, I would go for defensive, for one reason only. In combination with humanist, you have a land attrition negative 25% modifier, which is, again, very important for world conquest when you have hundreds of guys stacked together. From here, I would abandon religious ideas, as I no longer needed Deus Vult because imperialism had set in, and I wanted to get the negative 10 autonomy in provinces, and I'll show you why a little later. Next, I would get diplomatic ideas, as I knew I was going to need to truce break a lot, and I wanted this province war score cost. Finally, I would take court ideas for the extra 5% court creation cost that it has in combination with admin ideas. For policies, I would take the land attrition mod. I would also take the core creation cost. I would take a couple of other things, but those were the two important ones. Everything else was a bonus. They were not critical to the success of the run, as much as those two were. I want to take a moment to talk about my unique coring style, as it's something I've never tried before, and it was pretty strong and very interesting. So basically, I would state everything and never pay for a single core, right? So every single province probably can't even show. This would cause some lag near the end, which is, I'm here in 1760. It's kind of near the end. I can't even scroll. So everything would be a territorial core that I didn't core. So of course, this would put it down to 50%, and then I would stack minimum autonomy in territories to get this down to 10%. So basically, I would get 10% autonomy everywhere without having to pay the actual coring price. As you can see, most everywhere has 10% autonomy, and I did not pay to core these. And you'll notice this is super good for Gov, because I'm only paying 0.6. So I was able to basically core the whole world. I feel like this is pretty overpowered. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I made so much money I didn't even really bother with trade. And I know you can make so much money with trade, but really I was capped on money by the 1800s anyways. Well before the 1800s, really. And because I had everything cored, I also had a ridiculous max on manpower, if you look there. Nearly 4 million max, and I would get 50,000 manpower a month. It's pretty wild. I, of course, could benefit from the great projects in the New World as well, so that was pretty convenient. I did look on the internet for different strategies, and I had not seen anything like this. So I was skeptical that it would work, but I still wanted to try it out, and I made it work. Things I would have done differently. First and foremost, if I could figure out how to stay Mayan, that would have been huge. I probably wouldn't even ran into many problems in the endgame. My problems with my conquest all had to do with not being able to core things as fast as I wanted to. Basically, I would sit in wars and wait until stuff cored, and then I could end the next war and wait again. So I constantly ran into this problem of having to wait for core creation. So if I was able to keep that 20% from being Mayan, this conquest would have been so much easier. Another thing I would have considered is rather than become Protestant and do all that, I could have become Seed Piedmont and then became Germany, and that way I wouldn't have had to switch my religion off Mayan. Something to think about. I might play around with different idea groups, as I felt my military was super weak compared to the nations I was fighting until I became Prussia. So I would definitely look into the idea groups and see if those were the best choices, because at times it felt my army was super underwhelming. I felt like I couldn't win wars unless I severely outnumbered an opponent. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this sort of recap. If you want to look into a more detailed run, of course I have the whole 10-part series up on my channel. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing. And as always, have a great day, and thanks for watching.
Okay, I found this on the web for what's to have 25% corporation cost.